Now it is time for the third panel discussion session where we have the Chief Information Security Officers, security consultants and experts as a panelist to share their vision. The topic for the discussion is accelerating your business transformation strategy. The session is going to be moderated by Dr. Deepak Sahu. I would request Dr. Deepak to kindly take over the stage.
So the topic of the discussion is accelerating your business transformation strategy. So let me introduce about the theme. Digital technologies are powerful tools, but they require human intelligence and enthusiasm to be very effectively. Working remotely has been the norm for many organizations over the past year and a half. Estimated global losses for cybercrime are projected to hit just under record 1 trillion for 2020, as the coronavirus pandemic provided new opportunities for hackers to target consumers and business. Yes, phishing emails are not new, but attackers are always learning how to make their emails more authentic. According to a report, Data Breach Investigations report 36% of breaches involved phishing, an increase of 11% compared to last year 2020. On this background, I would like to invite Dr. Harold DeCosta, CEO, Intelligent Quotient, Mr. Biswajit Mahapatra, Partner, Global Delivery Leader, IBM India, Kamal Dhamija, CISO, Trident India, Dipesh Kaura, General Manager, South Asia, Kaspersky, and Harnath Babu, Partner and CIO, KPMG. To start with, my first question would be how to integrate cybersecurity with business strategy for building trust and creating value. Over to Kamal Dhamija.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So, being a CISO, it is very, very important. You have to make a balance between the IT services and the security. So, it should not be like that the business is not able to survive and you are still focusing on the security. So, there always needs to be balance out of it. So, how it comes over into the picture, I would like to share one experience of my organization. So, if it is going to be in the closed doors, I can tell you, we have an email security tool in place. But unfortunately, the emails which we are receiving from our partners are getting blocked because they have not configured their DMARC, SPF, and DKIM. Because of that, if they have not configured their domain in this particular 3 protocols for email security, the emails are getting blocked in our email security solutions. But we are getting requirements from the internal business teams that these emails should be passed through because these are our business partners. So what we people have done over there, rather than just blocking it blindly, we have opened that for a specific vendor, and we have done the education and we have taken the session with the vendors and the business team to make them understand that you have to make sure that these things are vulnerable. So whenever you're dealing with any kind of a payment, while making any payment to those vendors, so you have to make yourself double sure that you are not making payment in an account where you are not sure about it, or if you have received an email from some other user about change in the account details. So those kind of details you have to make sure you are going to validate over call as well from the vendor, from the users of those vendors. So this is one very important scenario.
Okay. So now we'll understand from Biswajit.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I would just like to set a context, basically, why cybersecurity and why it's getting so much center stream when it's kind of getting discussed around integrating with business strategy, right? All of us know the pandemic struck, it provided unprecedented challenges, in the same time, unique opportunities for all of us. The world has become more intelligent, more interconnected, and more instrumented today, right? And the entire business paradigm also started shifting. There is evolution of new business model, new age of doing work, and of course, need for building restless talent. And when you say new age of doing work, because of everything moving to online, security become the most critical foundation of anything and everything that we do. So it's extremely important to have security as the center stream when you build your business strategy. And I call it as ABCD of your business strategy, right? So what does that ABCD means? When you talk about A stands for how can you align your business strategy with your IT strategy while managing your threats? And B is all about building your cybersecurity posture so that you can address the challenges and opportunities that comes on your way. And C is all about how you can create a optimized model leveraging security to balance the need of your people, process, and technology. And D is all about develop a risk management plan which can address the newer challenges that you face in coming days. And coming back to cyber security and the role it is going to play in business strategy, it's all about hardening your existing systems, deploying in the cloud model, having multi-cloud hybrid security model in place, managing risk and compliance, right? All of us know, I think Kamal already talked about the compliance aspect of it. When you talk about managing risk and compliance, three different things, right? How do you really manage some of the industry needs like PCI, right? Or how do you really implement some of the security standards like ISO 27000 series? Or how do you really implement some of the standard best practices, industry best practices like HIPAA or Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, so to say, right? So those are the compliance you need to manage. Apart from that, whether it's automating your governance process, whether it's maybe like if I talk about my experience, how can you reduce some of the vulnerabilities that your ERP systems implemented in your organization may have, or how do you really protect your critical infrastructure? So all those are going to play a really very critical role when you embed cybersecurity or your security strategy into your business strategy, right? And that's exactly what the CXOs of your organization, your client's organization are looking today in terms of how can I keep my brand value intact? How can I manage my financials better? And how can I really provide a richer and better experience to my customers? That's basically what every client's CXO is looking at today.
Good, wonderful. Now I request Dipesh to throw some light on the topic.
So my take would be slightly away, because I mean what Kamal pointed out was very valid, and what Biswa is pointing is from a different perspective. My perspective is actually adding a third dimension to it. So both the topics were very, very, I would say, to the point. But somewhere I think from when we talk about integrating the entire cybersecurity piece into an organization, a lot of things go beyond the tools as well. So today, I think every 6 months, and I'm specifically Kamal and Harold and Biswa would agree, every 6-7 months there is a new tool which is coming up, which is solving some of the other problem related to cybersecurity. So over a period of time, you'll end up having a museum of tools and still not figuring out what is the right problem and where it is to be sorted. So I think somewhere as a culture, organizations need to imbibe the responsibility of being cyber aware and taking steps, and organizations should take steps to train their people to become cyber mature. I think as an organization, and specifically from a CISO point of view, if I look at it, I would, if I was a CISO, I would primarily want to do one cyber security exercise every 6 months without informing my employees. So I would want to hire an agency who could do a phishing attack and pick up the employees who actually fall as a bait to it. That is where you understand where is the sensitive points coming in, because as a practitioner you can get in so many tools, and like Kamal also pointed out, after a point in time it becomes very difficult to put more and more rules and more regulations and stop blocking this and stop blocking that. It is very difficult for a cybersecurity expert to keep blocking everything, because the moment you start blocking, there is so much resistance that comes into from people, from your end users. So I think imbibing that kind of a culture where people themselves take the responsibility of cybersecurity is, I think, the ideal way of when we talk about integrating something into the systems. Second, I have seen a few successful projects with I think 2 or 3 of my customers when they were moving from one technology to another. Especially, I would not want to name the customer, but I can very strongly recall when it was a cloud project where they were moving some part of their infrastructure and some part of their business to the cloud. So this journey of transition from one technology to another, they specifically ensured that they have imbibed the cyber security aspect as a part of the project itself, rather than it being an afterthought and then first let's move and then we will see how to protect it. I think that was a great step. So they literally took some budget out and they created a proper plan around that transition. So they had consultants in place, they had system integrators in place, there were OEMs in place, more than one OEM. Obviously, I was involved because I know about the project since I was involved. But then beyond me, also there were two more OEMs that were involved from the cybersecurity perspective, doing the balancing. I think that is where the integration part of cybersecurity comes in, where everybody comes together and takes that as an important initiative and works according. That entire project is planned around the security stuff. I think that makes a lot of difference, which is quite heartening for a cybersecurity guy to see that okay, people have come to that level where they are considering cybersecurity as an important step or a part of a project when the initiative is happening. I think that helps a lot.
Right. So since Dr. D'Costa comes from the technical and legal background, we will understand from Dr. D'Costa. D'Costa, you have to unmute.
Yeah. Most of the points are well explained by all other friends at this forum. Just 2 to 3 points, but I would just like to add it up. See, when you talk about this cyberspace, it's still not a well-guarded place. And we have a big concern as when cybercrimes take place, what to do. And one of the biggest concern is the jurisdiction point of view. And I think that part itself makes every organization to be very much cyber conscious about it. When you talk about, building up or integrating your cybersecurity with your business strategy, for me, what I take it out is data is very important, for an organization. It retains the data of its vendors, of its customers. And as on now, in today's scenario, I'm sure that no organization would have their data to be sprawled across without having any security in place. That's point number one. Point number two, today the customers have become very cautious about it. And they are asking the organization, they are asking their vendors, what type of a compliance you have in place, what type of a security practices you follow. So if you have a proper cybersecurity practices in place, which ensures that there are no legal issues which will come if there is any breach which takes place, there is no particular so-called loss to the organization, then they become conscious that yes, this is the organization that where we will do business with them. That's the first point of view. The second point of view. The third point of view, in today's scenarios, when you integrate the cybersecurity with your business strategy, you may have the ERP in place or the supply chain management, or to them your customer experience management. Your customers' attrition would be least when you have got your cybersecurity well integrated with your business practices. And last but not the least, any type of a pilferage, where that particular pilferage, what we are now talking at this forum is basically we are talking about the data loss. And the data loss is a biggest concern for any organization today. And if at all any organization has to survive in today's context, they have to ensure that whatever the applications they are building it up, those particular applications have to be tightly integrated with the best of the cybersecurity practices according to the laws of the land, such as they are not caught on the wrong front. And last but not the least, I would say in today's context, the integration of cybersecurity with your business strategy is very important, because the top sales of your organization and the bottom line of your organization today is dependent upon what type of a security you are giving to your data, how you are integrating your cybersecurity practices with your business practices to ensure that you move forward in your business with proper conscious, no legal threats, and very minimized set of competitors coming to your place and misusing the data what you have at your end.
So Deepak, I think companies have been really fast tracking on the digital transformation journey. I think at least last couple of months, I would say since the time COVID pandemic has come in, organizations have really moved very fast from a digital transformation perspective. either it's a legacy organization or a born digital organization. I think technology obviously has become an integral fabric, for these organizations, and data obviously is the most important asset. And when the data becomes important asset, obviously there is more, a threat from a cybersecurity perspective. So I think the role of cybersecurity, needs to be redesigned or redefined as we, create the digital enterprises. And organizations, when they look at creating digital customer experiences, it's about relooking at the way you have deployed your technology and securing the overall architecture itself, right? It's not limiting to one or two applications, but the overall technology architecture needs to be relooked at from a security perspective. Cybersecurity has to be integrated in the overall enterprise risk management rather than running as a standalone initiative in the organizations. So you need to also prepare teams to manage fraud prevention, security, product development. So any processes that you're running in the organization necessarily has to have cybersecurity and risk management in mind. So as companies, they leverage data analytics. Especially customer sensitive data is being analyzed for various purposes, primarily from a business point of view. It's important to identify the risks that are created from integrating this sort of data, right? They must also incorporate security controls into the analytic solutions. That may not have been part of the standard software development methodology. So typically, when you look at analytics, it's not a standard process that you follow, right? You typically pull the data out and then start analyzing. So there's no security that goes into in building analytic solutions. We've also seen a lot of adoption around RPA or robotic process automation, right? And one important thing is the whole governance angle around bots, right? So how do you manage the bot credentials? How do you ensure that the data or the processes that are being run by the bots are secure, right? I think that's another area where the organization needs to start thinking when they're going into more and more digitalization and automation. And we have seen in hyper-connected world where organizations are trying to integrate themselves with either extensions of their own of the same organization, let's say through distributors, or maybe to customers through APIs. I think what is important is to identify the vulnerabilities that could potentially be there in those APIs, right? And interaction with the APIs as and when a third party is interacting with the API, any specific threat it could bring into the data as well as the overall infrastructure. So the idea is to build, build and enforce standards across the overall software development process. I think another thing which I can think of is, as organizations are moving towards cloud, cloud has to be necessarily be configured for better security standards, because you want to be more agile, you want to build your solutions on the cloud, you want to deploy solutions, especially from a system of engagement perspective. So you need to necessarily have security standards deployed on the cloud, and you have to implement hardening and monitoring of the cloud environments you're deploying the solution. So and last but not the least, I think as you deal with sensitive customer data, consumer data privacy is the most important aspect that the organizations will need to start thinking on. How do you manage it better, right? And it has to be understood better, because the regulations are very stringent, and especially.
My second question would be, to maximize damage and financial gains, cyber criminals are shifting their targets from individuals and small business to major corporations, governments, and critical infrastructure, which play a crucial role in responding to the outbreaks. What is your take on it? To start with, Kamal. Awaz. Yeah.
Deepak, I just lost you actually.
So you are not here?
I was actually. I told you.
To maximize the damage and financial gain, cyber criminals are shifting their targets from individuals and small business to major corporations, governments, and critical infrastructure, which play a crucial role in responding to the outbreak. What is your take on it?
Okay, so in this, definitely there are two very, very important parts over here. One, the financial institutions who are covering these corporations. For example, SEBI, if he is just monitoring the stock exchange companies of India, they play a very major role to make sure that the governance is built around the controls which has been requested by these financial institutions. For example, if a payment card industry is in place right now, so SEBI should force the financial organizations to follow the PCI DSS guidelines so that the organization should be able to provide the secure services to its customers. That is the one KRA. Second, which is very, very important over here is the user awareness. You have to make sure that users are not going to make blunders over there. The new initiative which is government is bringing right now for the UPI, but we all have seen a lot of cases which are coming into the picture, because if a guy has made a transaction for 1,000 rupees, so if there is a blunder over there, he is going to lose that 1,000 rupees, but we cannot recover those 1,000 rupees as well easily, because to recover those 1,000 rupees, you have to invest a much more amount than 1,000 rupees. The guy who has done this cybercrime might be sitting in somewhere in the Bihar region or somewhere in the Naxalite region, and nobody can go over there and get the amount from there. So how best we can do it? We have to make our user aware so that we can say the prevention is better than later on regretting about the things that we have done these kind of things in the market. So that is the second point, which is very, very important for financial transactions related things. Third thing, we have to bring the education for the cops and the civil judges and the Supreme Court judges as well, because these people are working since ages, but the technology is coming with a very, very higher speed, very fast speed right these days, and coping up with those technologies is little tough for those people as well. So it is our responsibility to make sure to make all these people tech savvy, that how things work, so that they can understand the magnitude of the crimes, how it is happening these days. That's all 3 points from my side.
Good. Now I'll understand from Biswajit.
Okay, so the question, Deepak ji, is basically why cyber criminals are shifting to larger organizations and government organizations, right? Yeah.
Critical infrastructures.
Yeah. So I'll tell you basically what's the dynamics, right? So I was talking about the working from home attacks, basically, right? So suddenly overnight, the entire workforce has shifted to work from home, right? So people started using their own private broadband networks to do both official as well as personal job, right? So that kind of increased the perimeter area of security that you really need to take care of, right? So that was one of the things probably cyber criminals started taking a lot of advantage, right? Then if you really look at last 6 months, the trends of ransomwares in 2021, almost every month it has been kind of rising, right? So maybe in January you had around 19, February you had around 21, March 23, 25, right? That's the way the numbers is growing. Of course, there is a little dip in July, right? So if you really look at all those things, so you can very well safely predict that the number of attacks kind of really increasing. And if you really look at starting from the Randstad, Foxconn and other SolarWinds days of December, I think a lot of large organizations and basically academic institutions are also falling prey to those ransomwares, right? So slowly, I think there's a shift of work process of the cyber criminals as well as threat actors to move towards larger organizations is what I see basically, right? Then the other thing that's becoming very predominant is basically, which is your brute force frustrations, what I say, right? Typically doing denial of services attacks as well as basically leveraging your SNMP or SSDP crime bot protocols and completely making large organizations business very, very unstable, basically, right? That's another trend that's kind of getting observed as a recent phenomena. Of course, it was there, but I think it's kind of increasing in a larger scale today, right? And then the other point, what is happening in the industry is basically frontline phishing, right? That's becoming pretty predominant, right? With we all know, right? How probably NHS gave a directive that people are kind of in Europe giving maybe COVID vaccination slots, right? Or selling something on the social media to attract the people, or even COVID accessories, right? Those are also kind of some of the things that's impacting a lot of business and a lot of people so to say, right? So having said that, yes, there was a complete shift towards large enterprises and organizations. And if you know, some of those things are ranging into some of the demands around 35 million, $50 million average, basically, right? So, and it's going to go on only in coming days, because the more you, I'm sure probably Deepak will also talk about that, the more probably the security organizations are coming up with some of the things to stop those. The hackers and the threat actors are becoming more and more smarter to come up with newer means and newer ways of doing things, right? So interesting time, but of course, some of the minimum things that you need to do to educate your workforce, what to use, what not to use, right? So typically, I'll give you an example for one of my clients recently, where we call it as fileless framework, right? So many of the, and SolarWinds was exactly an example of that, right? Where probably threat actors are trying to piggyback on some of the other softwares that is being trusted within the organizations to enter the organization perimeter and then draw havoc, basically, right? So those are the things probably in coming days needs to be more stricter and needs to be taken care of. Of course, there are so much technologies available today, whether you do multi-factor authentication, you implement zero trust security, right? Perimeter segmentation, so on and so forth, SASE, or even the SOAR techniques that you can implement. But having said that, yes, it's going to be interestingly kind of, I call it as a cat and mouse game in coming days. That's what I'm looking at. Yep.
I think Dipesh can throw some more light because he's into purely security player. Kaspersky. Let's understand from Dipesh.
Yeah, that's true. So Biswajit rightly pointed out, because of people moving suddenly out of the office premises and doing all the office work from home has been a huge surprise for all the organizations, because none of the organizations were ever prepared for this kind of a work culture. I mean, all the B2B and BCP plannings and everything has gone for a toss. What has primarily happened is, since the perimeter is completely gone and people are not only working from home now, they are working from anywhere. There is a trend where people are going out for vacations and staying there and working from those locations as well. So there is an inherent, how do I say, an inherent lapse on the cyber security front. I mean, if you are working from a hotel, your cyber security is definitely below zero, I would say, because that same router or the same source of internet is being shared by so many people at the same time. So I think fundamentally right now it is going back to the drawing board for the organizations and reworking on their strategies. And the entire focus, I would say, right now in this whole work from home or work from anywhere scenario has moved back to the endpoint. So if I go back to the security days, maybe 3 years ago, the security was more around, how do I protect a network? How do I get advanced security in place? What should be my correlation rule and so on and so forth. But with this new wave that suddenly struck people overnight, I think the entire focus is back to the endpoint, because no matter where you are, your endpoint becomes the weakest link and the first entry point. So that's been a big change and shift in the way cybersecurity is being planned today. So everything is back to the endpoint. Second, I think organizations are being hit more because, like I said, of the lapse of cybersecurity. So the first and the fundamental thing, I think, get back to the basics and look at the hygiene. If I could suggest something, I think going back to a VPN setup where you tunnel your connectivity of every user through a VPN or a multi-factor authentication, I think is main today. So fraud prevention can be reduced drastically if organizations follow a good VPN setup and look at multi-factor authentication. It definitely makes a huge difference, because it just makes it slightly more difficult for an attacker to attack from outside and get into a well controlled or a regulated endpoint, I would say. Second, again, I would agree completely with Kamal the way he pointed out. Regulators need to get slightly more strict with the impositions and the kind of rules that they want to enforce on organizations, specifically BFSI, specifically governments, because that is where either there is a lot of sensitive data or there is a direct impact of money. So these are a strong regulatory practice will definitely make a huge difference. Also, like I said, following the basics of cyber security, protecting the endpoint, having a good VPN in place, ensuring a good multi-factor authentication practices being followed. Looking at solutions like PIM and PAM will also make a lot of difference, because you are able to give restricted access to people and give them access only as much as required. That itself, creates some kind of boundaries when you are in a situation and you've been hit by a breach, or is there a cyber attack in some way or the other. So definitely the attack on the large organizations has been much higher. I don't want to quote numbers right here, but the figures are scary, and the figures are Indian figures today. So we need to look at those, because today the consumer, the end user and a corporate user is the same. And like Biswa pointed out, he's using the same machine to do his banking transaction, to do his online shopping. At the same time, he's using that same machine to do his office work as well. So it's a fact. Endpoint protection needs to be taken care of, because the impact on users for large organizations is much higher than it was before. No doubt on that.
I have a rapid fire question for you, Dipesh. Have your business has increased?
Drastically.
Wonderful.
Drastically.
Now we'll understand from Dr. D'Costa. Are you agree with from the statement from Biswajit and Dipesh, because they both are from the corporate world? What is your take on it? Because you are the end advisor to the security forces and judges all. Dr. D'Costa, can you share your thought on it?
I heard, all what Dipesh, Biswajit, and other friend also said on the on this event. But then what they said is absolutely right. Just one or two points, if at all I had to add from the global scenario point of view, and that is today the cyber criminals, they have become a slight more complicated. They know that they would like to access big corporates, because they know that there's a lot of data. Today, there is a problem with the job market. Many of them are jobless. And I think the data market is something which has been properly harnessed by these cyber criminals.
Correct.
So they will always look across for the major corporations in terms of getting what type of a project is going on at this moment, what R&D, what type of a sensitive information they have. From a legal perspective background, we have various types of data, which is sensitive, which is personal, and which is confidential. Now, all of these parameters are more focused, are more magnified today on the big corporates rather than on small institutions or a small industry, to that fact. Point number two is that why these cyber criminals are also attacking the major giants. All cyber criminals may not be bad. The reason is that because at the time of some investigations, it was found that they want to expose the corruption system also. And that's the reason where they find in the big corporates, they find that there are a lot of corruptions which takes place. And so they would like to address to the issue of hacking into a system which is a big corporate, where they could make a story out of it, where it is on the normal, on the digital convergence or on the governance point of view, it is something which is right, so on and so forth. Then there are third angle to be looked across. And the third angle is that the cyber criminals are attacking the social media. Well, we have been seeing it out, in the past few days, what is happening on the social media forum. Well, on the social media forum, that's once again a big forum where these people can voice their concerns. So what I mean to say is that the cyber criminals are more sophisticated in their thoughts, in their minds. They know that smaller institutions, they don't want to put their mind or effort over there, because it is not only the money which attracts them. There are some other facts also getting socially recognized. bringing some particular facts to the society, and making some unaware people that look, if this is something which is wrong in the system going on, and all of this they will try to attack only the major corporates, major giants, and not look upon the small institutions for hacking purpose, so on and so forth.
Good, wonderful, wonderful. So the same thing, yesterday night I was talking to one of a hacker over some website. He said, why you hack the system? He gave a very good answer. It will surprise you, okay? Because he said, very sarcastic answer. Like corporates, those are giving IT services, they charge us huge money. They're supposed to secure everything what they promise, but they don't. So we expose them. I'm just asking,
Sometimes not true, actually. I know the problem of CISO. Sometimes they really see a problem and they can't solve it because they don't get the funds. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think COVID obviously has made companies, especially in last year and a half, made companies move from on-premise to working from remote. I think this has been pretty prevalent. During the lockdown, people moved to their hometowns and different locations, obviously away from the office. And as they work outside the office, earlier the comfort with the organizations was, employees are there in the office, they are, and they were working within a perimeter. So there was a comfort of security. But as people start working from remote, I think they are more susceptible to cyber threats. Obviously, vulnerable targets are an easy, I would say, entry to the enterprise networks, right? So if an employee who's unaware of the issues related to cybersecurity, whose machine is not patched, right, or is potential for any, or it can be a potential target for any cyber criminal. I think it's an easy cakewalk for for cyber criminals, especially those sort of employees, right? And cyber criminals have moved from smaller organizations or individuals to larger enterprises because of these vulnerabilities, right? And they have also started doing large-scale phishing campaigns. In fact, during the last, I would say, couple of months, there have been a large, I would say, illegal online sale of fake medical supplies, vaccination. And again, as individuals, people tend to fall prey to some of these phishing scams. And obviously, when they click on those links, and that's where the cyber, criminals, they enter into the machine. So the threat actors are, making people or they're deceiving people to execute malware on those machines through these channels. And the focus obviously has gone to government agencies also, as well as healthcare sector, especially hospitals, because during the time of stress, when there is difficult situation, if you are deploying a malware, if you're trying to hold a service, obviously anybody will compromise to to the demands of a cyber criminal. So I think the main reason is, just to summarize my point, it's an easy entry for cyber criminals, especially in the current times, and as the awareness is low, or awareness could be low for many employees, because there's a sudden shift from from offices to remote. So I think they're an easy prey. That's what I would want to say.
Next question: with the adoption of cloud strategy, most of the organizations today are bringing new risks that have to be managed. Share with us suggestions. So you start with Dipesh.
Yeah. See, when you move to the cloud, like I said, every cyber secure, every organization, every business vertical has a different cyber maturity, according to me, from whatever I've seen in the last few years. So if you look at a BFSI, they are much more cyber mature, I would say. They know what they are doing. They have the funds. They have the people. They have so many OEMs lined up outside their offices to give them the solutions that they would wish to have. But if you look at a manufacturing vertical, they are the ones who are now taking note of this kind of problems and trying to invest their best. So every organization has a different level of cyber maturity and awareness, and every business is different from a sensitivity point as well. My suggestion, or rather, that's what in my earlier days when I was a consultant, I used to possibly give them the same tips that when you're moving to the cloud, it's a new experience for an organization altogether. So the transition should be taken in small chunks, in baby steps, and maybe if possible, every month, do a proper review about how is the experience of your organization and what are the challenges you're facing. And the first step would be to take the least risky part first, so that if at all there are challenges, it could be cyber challenges, it could be transition challenges, it could be connectivity challenges, it could be a user experience problem. So if you are moving with things which are, or that part of the business which is least sensitive, then it becomes easier to take bigger steps once you've taken the learning curve with you. Second, like I said, I spoke about this organization before, when they are moving to the new generation of technologies, they make it a point to ensure that the cyber practice or the cyber aspect of that entire project is integrated at the time of inception, rather than it being an afterthought. An afterthought will always be a problem, and you will never be able to fix the issue properly, because the word itself is cloud, right? It is somewhere in the air, and you really don't know what is going to happen when you get there. So for any organization, big, small, for any vertical, BFSI, manufacturing, IT, ITES, cloud is a big aspiration, but they really don't know the challenges once they get there. So take smaller steps, take easier projects, complete them before you get into the next project, and learn from your mistakes. Most importantly, cover the cyber aspect as you transition and not afterwards. These are my very strong observations. I have seen great successes and I have seen amazing disasters as well. So I think the inception story needs to be concrete. It cannot be ad hoc. Proper planned approach with small projects, and then learn from there and make it big. I would advise it that way.
You are right. So Vishnu, how you will address this situation?
Okay, so I kind of tend to agree to every point that Deepesh talked about, right? So the first thing, maybe I'll share some of my experience, since my business is global and I do a lot of consulting on cloud transformation space with many clients. So some of the normal misconceptions that clients actually talk about when they say hybrid multi-cloud joining, basically, right? First thing, there is a great amount of misunderstanding around shared responsibility model.
Correct.
Right? Point one.
100%.
Right. So cloud operates on a shared responsibility model, right? And if a tenant is not aware of who is responsible for managing the data in transit, who is responsible for managing the data in rest, right? What you are doing, how you are doing encryption, cryptography. Even people are talking about confidential computing now, right? How do you even use confidential computing to do the data during, encrypt the data during manipulation, right? So there's a great amount of misconception there among the people when they embrace the cloud journey. Then the point number two, it looks very simple, but very critical. Patch management, right? What happens, right? So if I am, as part of my hybrid multi-cloud strategy, if I am owning, let's say, some on-premise self-managed infrastructure along with the public cloud that the hyperscalers are managing, I need to be very clear about having a continuous, regular program towards addressing the patches and managing those patches, which kind of typically goes unnoticed or unaddressed, right? Then the point number three, what I am looking at is, and again, very important, I have adopted serverless computing. So that means I am extremely secure, right?
Secure.
Of course, you have your infrastructure secured, but what about the code pieces that you are writing? Let's say you have used AWS Lambda functions, or if you used Azure function, have you really taken care of the security of those code? Maybe not, right? So that's become another problem point, right? Then the fourth point is all about putting everything together, right? There's a tendency today, no matter what is my data classification, I think some of us talked about that earlier as well. I tend to put everything in the same storage, basically, right? Do I need to really segment my network across different VPCs? Do I need to create VPCs for my dev, test, and production environment, that goes completely unanswered, right? We all know about the story about least privilege and no need to know kind of aspects, right? So that's another thing that I have observed when it comes about adopting the multi-cloud journey, right? So to put all this story and experience into one long overarching story, I think when you are adopting cloud adoption journey, a programmatic approach, like Dipesh said, is extremely important, right? It's not about one-off project. It's not about buying a tool and implementing it, right? You have to really have a programmatic approach to address your cloud adoption journey, right? You have to understand what is your current state. You have to understand what is the target state you are going to reach at. What is the gap, no matter if you're starting or you're already embraced cloud, and how do you really take a step-by-step, those baby steps Dipesh was talking about, to really leapfrog into your target cloud architecture to reap the benefits, right? That should be the cloud transformation approach, the way I look at it, actually.
Wonderful. So, Dr. DeCosta, how you will address this situation?
You see, with the advent of the cloud technology, the end user is actually not aware what exactly is happening on, because his peer is using a cloud services, so he also would like to enter into that bandwagon. What I mean to put it out is that with the advent of the cloud technology in place, have the cybersecurity breaches have increased? Yes, they have increased. The compliance violations have increased to a larger extent now. There are some specific sections in the Information Technology Act, unable to protect the data, unable to protect the information. If there is any laxity on point of the user in not having the data to be properly protected, the compensation is up to 5 crore rupees to the victim so-called affected. Now, what happens is that with all of these modern trends now coming in, people are unaware what exactly they have to do. So the compliance violations have increased exponentially in the last year or so. Number two, when we are having a third-party services, well, you have been having your data to be stored on a cloud platform, you feel that your job is over. You feel that the service provider will take care of complete of my data, my security, so on and so forth. But on the dotted lines, you have to read the terms of the agreement. And in the terms of the agreement, there is a large onus still which lies on the user itself as to how the data is stored, how the data is mitigated, how it is being used, so on and so forth. Number three, the cloud as a platform is provided by a vendor to you. They are providing their services, but you don't know how to configure it. And because you don't know how to configure it, because you don't know how to use it, most of the time it has been found that many of the breaches takes place at the end user level, because he doesn't know that how should I port my data, how should I add the permissions, even though these may be all the GUI based, but the awareness among the end user is the least. I would like to quote one case which I was just handling. Just in a minute, I'll complete this out. And I had one a case with me where this person happened to be having all his services on the cloud, and he had a major problem with his ex-employee. And he said that my ex-employee has stolen my data and uploaded on the cloud, by which on one of the portal, and then he's making tons of money, so on and so forth. When I was investigating that case, when I was doing the compliance audit of that portal, which was there on the cloud, I found that majority of the issues which he thought was a problem which was done by the employer was actually done by him. And he himself was unaware that he has kept his particular data completely exposed, completely open for the other people to use it. And as a result, when I asked him, when I was working in that investigation, when I put forward this question, that you have not protected your own data, you have not protected your own house, and you're saying that a hacker has come, a thief has come and taken your data and misused that data and made money out of it, has violated your IPR, so on and so forth. How come you are making an offense out of it? In fact, I went to an extent and I asked the investigating officer, How could you register an offense under this scenario when there is a laxity from the user itself? And at the end of the day, he was finally onto the back foot and he said that, I don't know what is this cloud platform. Because my peer was using, because my competitor is using, I started using it. And now I understand that I should understand the whole process, the need of it before I mitigate my particular services onto the cloud, so on and so forth. That's my take onto it.
You have been an educator also. Good.
So Deepak, see, I think with the whole idea of digital transformation and the agility that is required, I think organizations certainly have moved to the cloud. I think many of them have gone ahead and done the cloud first strategy for two reasons. Obviously, you want to develop and deploy solutions or applications that are required for customer engagement or transformation as fast as possible. And second is the whole collaboration platform that is completely running on the cloud necessarily has to be utilized by everybody, especially when you're working from remote. So keeping these two things in mind, I think it's important for organizations to not only focus on bringing the solutions in, but also continue to secure those solutions, right? When I'm saying secure, when you're having solutions, especially developed, which is cloud native, or when you're doing hybrid cloud kind of deployments, you need to make sure that you have the right technology in place from a security perspective. So before you deploy your applications, you harden the infra that is on the cloud. The responsibility and another myth that typically has been there in most of the organizations' minds is once I deploy my solution on a cloud environment, it's the responsibility of the cloud provider. That's not the case, right? I mean, the responsibility of the cloud provider is only up to securing the infrastructure part of the thing, especially if you're, let's say you're taking an infrastructure as a service or a PaaS or a SaaS, depending on which model have you taken. The security of the infrastructure obviously is the responsibility of the cloud provider, but the security of the data continues to remain with the organization. So I think that's one of the myths that they have to kind of get away with. Second is re-look at your security policies, especially from a cloud perspective. I think that's very important because you could be thus far only focusing on perimeter security or maybe endpoint security. But I think as the cloud comes in, it brings in its own share of challenges. Third thing is when you are putting in data onto the cloud, the access becomes even, because suddenly earlier it was within the perimeter in your data center, now it's outside. So how do you continue to retain some of the access controls that you used to have in your earlier applications now in the cloud as well, right? I think some of those nuances have to be thought of. So maybe end up looking at a CASB solution, or maybe you can look at security continuous security assessment. You need to continuously run vulnerability scans on your cloud infrastructure to make sure that nothing is kind of left open. So I think the whole idea of security has to be thought through again from a cloud cloud perspective.
And Deepak ji, I would definitely what Harold sir is saying, when people move to the cloud, I don't know how and why they believe that it's not my responsibility because everything is on someone else's infrastructure. It is their responsibility and I'm out of it. However, if you actually understand what a cloud does and how it is, creating that extra advantage for you as an organization, your responsibility on the cloud is actually much more than when it was on premise, because on premise, whatever is there is your own. You have created a perimeter and you know how to protect it. On the cloud, there are so many tenants sharing your infrastructure. It becomes the data or the privacy is much more difficult and complicated when it gets onto the cloud. And somehow I don't know where and when this perception has hit the market that once it goes on the cloud, then what? I'm sorted. Actually, that is where your problems begin, and it became multifold because you don't even know what you're going to face once you hit the cloud. So I completely agree. These things would not be new.
You want to hear the reason?
Yes, please, if you can.
All cloud providers, they have to write in the very bold and clear These are the risks involved. But however, they at present disclaimer at the small word. They have to write on they have to do branding. You are most welcome, but you have to make the protocols ready. Anyway, we'll move on to the last question. That is finally how to respond to emerging attacks by applying threat intelligence and analytics. I would request everyone to respond in one sentence, if possible.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think.
Okay, yeah, Biswa, go on.
Okay.
Go on,
So
go on.
I think with the evolution of cognitive enterprise, there is a lot of focus on artificial intelligence, machine learning, right? And the amount of data that's getting created across the organizations are humongous, basically, right? So you need to really apply right AI/ML techniques, right? How do you do adaptive behavioral analysis? How do you really understand the anomalous behaviors, right? Using those techniques, whether you are doing stride modeling, or whether you are doing STMM, which is basically hybrid threat modeling, threat management modeling, or PASTA, or many such models are available today, right? And prioritize what actions you need to really take for each of those threat modeling actions to make your organization more foolproof. Basically, I can talk about one of my European client who used to pay huge amount of penalties. It's a European bank because of the anti-money laundering and fraudulent practices. But finally, they implemented some of the third-party anti-money laundering product and could get over that, basically, right? So it's extremely important, and prioritization is key.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
And how Dipesh you will address?
So I would suggest, from a security operations center perspective, when you're doing your analytics, I think you need to have more than one mechanism to detect. One threat intel is not going to help you. You need to have multiple sources so that your coverage and understanding of the threat surface is better. Second, I think you should have at least one mechanism where you can authenticate the kind of threat which is being shown. So there can be so many threats that come in. So you need someone to help you out on that. And it all comes from the best practices that the industry follows. Fundamentally, you need to know how to differentiate a threat from an alert. There could be 100 alerts in a SOC, but every alert is not a threat. So you need to really know how to filter that, and that comes with having a right backend who can point out that right, pick up the alert and convert it into a threat or no threat. So that kind of analytics and that kind of mechanisms are available in the market. It's a combination of people, process, and technology, both put together. All three put together. But the aspiration for anybody should be that. How do I pick up the threat from the hundreds of alerts which is coming in? That will solve the problem.
Wonderful. Dr. De Costa?
I think majority of the points have been covered, but if I have to say on a couple of points, the first, I think the Lakshman Rekha within your organization have to be tightened. So when I say Lakshman Rekha, it means smart firewalls and just not intelligent firewalls. That's one. The second thing is, in order to ensure about your threat intelligence and the analytics, you should also have your risk assessment and mitigation properly done. In fact, now there is a big brother of risk assessment and mitigation, which is cybersecurity maturity assessment. And I think that time has come that we have to do a matured assessment of the network where we have been working across with. There has to be a security operation teams, specifically operation teams, to ensure that what is happening in the organization, what type of threats are taking place, how to minimize it, so on and so forth. And last but not the least, regular assessment is very, very important to be done. It's something we are all glued up that coronavirus will do this, COVID will do this, COVID will do that. All those things are going on. At the end of the day, with all due respect, the fatality rate is less than 2%. But I would say on the cyberspace, I would say that on the internet space, when we are using technology day in and day out, here the fatality rate could be as high as 98% because we don't have proper cyber hygiene practices in place. And if there is an economic recession which goes on, then I think people will all forget about COVID and people will all talk about the digital governance which has been failed so on and so forth. So I would say proper risk assessment, cybersecurity maturity assessment, smart firewalls, just not intelligent firewalls, and a core team to ensure that each of the threats which has been coming properly analyzed, properly risk assessment to be done, and then a mitigation plan has to be made for it.
When you look at digital organizations, right? When you look at information assets, right? So, and especially when you're monitoring your information assets, you will actually see a daily flood of data which is full of information. It could be false alarms, it could be multiple security systems that you would have deployed, multiple solutions that you deployed, right? And there's so much of a data that is flowing in. You will need to make sense out of that data. That's number one, right? And second is we need to also have people who understand how to analyze this data and make sense out of this data, right? That's the second big problem. So how do you make sure that you're making sense of your investment that you're done in security? Because obviously these solutions will continue to throw alerts, continue to throw alarms. So I think it's important to deploy a threat intelligence solution, which could potentially use a machine learning and automate the overall threat context on indicators of compromise, or maybe let's say tactics, or let's say procedures of threat actors, right? So that's these are some of the key benefits of when you look at a threat intelligence platform. So I think another important thing is, especially from a vulnerability point of view, so the whole vulnerability management teams can actually prioritize which particular areas you want to manage or fix. Because once you have a clear visibility on what is happening, especially from a threat intelligence perspective, I think the prioritization can be done, right? Another thing is the whole idea of fraud prevention, risk analysis, and other high-level security processes. They can be enriched by better understanding of this data, especially from a threat intelligence perspective. And the idea at the end of the day is to see how these threat actors are, what sort of tactics are they using, what techniques are they using, what procedures are they following? Because I think it's important to understand the other side of the, story as well, right? What sort of methodology are they using to come to you and start attacking you? So I think threat intelligence solutions are a great, I would say, support for cybersecurity teams when they're trying to analyze the data and come up with the trends and patterns of attacks.
Thank you. So wonderful inputs, and we are thankful for all the panelists for sharing their views. My key takeaway from the panel discussion is the unprecedented coronavirus pandemic is profoundly affecting the global cyber threat landscape, compounding a global health crisis with a sharp increase. Cyber criminal activities related to COVID-19 is putting significant strain on law enforcement communities worldwide. Concurrently, due to sudden and necessary global shift to work from home anywhere, organizations have had to rapidly deploy remote systems, networks, and applications. As a result, criminals are taking advantage of the increased security vulnerabilities arising from remote working to steal data, generate profits, and cause disruptions. So thank you very much, panelists, for sharing their valuable inputs. Thank you very much.
Thank you all the panelists. It was indeed a wonderful and insightful session. Transformation is an ongoing process, not just because technology is always advancing, but also because the needs of the customers and providers are changing with the world as well.